that statement to his employees, which he kept going back to cancel culture and silencing. No one said they were silencing anybody. It was ridiculous. It's such a virtue signal by these people.
Okay. No one said anything about silencing. That's ridiculous. It's such a virtue signal by these. How does that sound when I say it? Does it sound acceptable, or does it sound very pot kettle, calling each other white? I feel it sounds very pot kettle. Doesn't sound okay. My dear Kara Swisher, has to do with the self-righteous tone. You are very, I'm on the mountaintop and I'm looking down and I see the things that the masses are doing wrong. Now, I have never once heard an ounce of self-reflection or self-awareness. It's so interesting how Scott Galloway, my boy, like the degree to which I have really come to respect his viewpoint, although he says some shit later in this episode that we'll get to, but he's always kind of self-correcting. He's always self-navigating. He's always seemingly very thoughtful. Kara, I don't understand why you're not say, well, it's not even about that. Oh, well, and I said this. Oh, and I posted, and I. And to be frank, it is about canceling. It is about canceling. That is exactly what the Spotify uproar. You guys keep saying that this is about Spotify and it's not about Rogan. We talked about whether or not to keep your show on or take your show off. That was not a conversation that needed to be a part of the podcast. And to be honest with you, you didn't even need to consider it. Neil Young's reasoning was so specific, was so defined. He comes from a particular background, having had polio, where there was no vaccines available. The fact that artists are talking about pulling their music off is really about the slave labor kind of platform that has been established and endorsed, not just on Spotify, on every single social media platform, okay? Even slave labor aspect to all online media and all online content, where consumers are nothing but pouring into the economy. No one is producing, like most of the people who listen to your podcast are probably not making as much money as you're making from their listening to your podcast. Like, just keep your thing up on Spotify. Like if you have to hem and haw over it this much, that's to me says to you that is not as we say, that's not your ministry. The fact that there's indecision to me is a very telling point. It means that y'all ain't trying to leave. And it's so interesting to hear you guys grasping at straws and trying to bottom line your actions. You can't bottom line them. You literally, you can say this is about Spotify and then so bottom line that. If it's about Spotify, so it's just about Spotify allowing Joe Rogan to interview people about COVID, to say things that the CDC wouldn't necessarily back up. If you want to make the case that this is about Spotify and not about Joe Rogan, then where are your digging in the crates, as they say back in the DJ days? Where are your digging in the crates facts? Because if it's about Spotify, what about Joe Budden? What about Joe Budden? Joe Budden, the other Joe that has some controversy over at Spotify, or had some, because at the time that they offered Joe Rogan that $100 million deal, they lost another podcaster who, at the time of Joe Rogan's contract signing, Joe Budden was trying to negotiate a better deal. Go back and listen to his episodes, a 3-hour episode all about why he left Spotify. And the shit's fucking revealing, because that will show you who Spotify is as a company. That would have been a very good tech argument, because Joe Budden was pulling out all of the facts, all of the data, pulling out facts on facts on facts to support his negotiating his contract at a higher level. And they gaslit him. They gaslit him, which is exactly what Joe Rogan is doing with his fucking N-word compilation thing. And exactly Scott Galloway, who I ride hard for. That sounded bad, but I truly admire you. And would love to take one of your classes, would love to be a mentee. But what you're not going to do is get an amen or a yes or a nod along with that thing that you said, where it's like the worst thing that's going to happen to America is video editing software and the internet and being able to look back. That's the best thing, because it will reveal who people really are. And I'm sorry, if you are not who you were 5 years ago, then there is a conscientiousness, a level of conscientiousness that I know for a fact one would apply to one's digital footprint in the same way that they would. Be clear, it is about Joe Rogan. It's not about Spotify. And why you guys are creating this hill to die on is beyond acknowledging the context of the Joe Rogan conversations and like how these things came up. You're not even acknowledging that one episode where Joe Rogan really tried to go head to head with this doctor, saying that that in fact that young men were however many times as likely to get a blood clot or something from one of the vaccines. And the doctor was like, that is a thing, but in fact there's been research to show that that in that age group there's 4 or 5 or 50 million times higher incidence of blood clot or whatever by contracting COVID. And your boy Joe Rogan said, no, that's not true. Literally said, it was his knee-jerk reaction, no, that's not true. And the doctor, bless his heart, was like, yeah, there's a study, blah blah blah. And Joe Rogan said at least 2 times, I want to say 3, that the motherfucker wasn't true. Finally, he does this whole fact-checking thing that he does, and his producer looks the shit up, and it was true. What the doctor said was true. And then this motherfucker got the nerve, this motherfucker being Joe Rogan, got the nerve to then say, how do we know that this publication by the HHS can be trusted? That right there is the thing. Those are the things. Those incidents are the things about which we should be talking, because that's not Joe Rogan. I kind of want to venture to say that a little bit of that is just being white. That level of self-assured, no, that's wrong. No, that's wrong. That's literally how you guys sound in reaction to Joe Rogan. That's not right. That's just not right. And that, to me, is the whole problem. That stronger reaction to quote unquote COVID misinformation. I'm not saying that the brother's been saying accurate things about the vaccine or about the pandemic, or I'm not fact checking his show. I don't have the transcripts of his show. I don't know the precise incidents about which people are upset. And I venture to say that neither do y'all. However, but I've known about the N-word aspects of Joe Rogan. I've known it, which is the reason why it was so interesting to me a year ago or 2 years ago to hear that Joe Budden was leaving Spotify literally at the same time that Joe Rogan was coming. I knew something was up. I started listening to his podcast then because I suspected that there's something not right here. See, the thing is about things not being right. You'll notice if you dig beneath the surface, a lot of times it has to do with people who don't like black people, or it has to do with whiteness in America. And when I say whiteness, I'm not talking about race. I'm not talking about people of color. I'm not talking about BIPOC. I'm not talking about racial reckoning. I'm talking about whiteness as it was upon which this country was established. I'm talking about that. I'm talking about I know best, I know better. That's not right. This is right. Like all of that, like that cycle of reaction, that cycle of assertion that continues to repeat itself in this country. That's what I'm talking about. And I just don't understand how there's no sense of awareness that it's proliferating. Literally, it's the undercurrent of everything. And so you are virtue signaling in the same way that white people have been virtue signaling for the entire life cycle of this country. Read the historical documents upon which this country was founded. They're nothing but virtue signaling, while also depriving rights from an entire cast of people. That's what I'm talking about. Meanwhile, the CDC has so many information vacuums. Like, there's no denying that. So many double backs, double speaks, and information vacuums. Like, part of why the misinformation is even allowed to thrive is because we have not been doubling down on accurate information. And even as it's evolving, we don't even know how to talk about an evolving presence of truth. Misinformation has been around since the dawn of time. Black people were stupider. Black people need to be staged. Get the fuck out of here. Like, that is the American way, is misinformation. So don't get on some high and mighty horses now, talking about you're taking these stances for misinformation. There's a whole bunch of misinformation stances motherfuckers could have been taken a long time ago. So it is about virtue signaling, and y'all are doing it each and every time you have these unnecessary arguments about whether to keep your podcast on Spotify. Stop it. I like y'all too much. Any sense? Y'all got better things to talk about, so go on ahead and talk about them. Meanwhile, you want to take one off of a dude who's been saying this for literally at least a year, like 100% a year. So my thing is, what took y'all so long? If you are like, you need to tell me the journey. You need to tell me throughout the year how you have been tracking these instances of his COVID misinformation. You did not reference one single incident of misinformation purported by Joe Rogan, not once. But then you get this little N-word compilation tape, and then here goes my brother, Scott Galloway, again, who I actually truly admire. And I'm gonna give him a pass. It's the only pass I'm gonna ever give you, Scott. I'm gonna give you a pass because I ride hard for you in this little pivot show. He gonna have the nerve to tell me that it's a slippery slope, or that it's dangerous when we go back through the archives, okay? And we pick up the N-word things and we mush them together because that's a really dangerous. So let me tell you something. It's dangerous if your archives have that word. So maybe, Scott, you may need to go back through your archives and make sure, do all the searches, okay? Do all the internet searches, do them on Bing and DuckDuckGo and all. Don't just do Google Boo. Go within the platforms, okay? Go within Twitter and do some searches. Go within YouTube. Search. Like you said, search is what it's about, and it is. But you need to get smart about what's in your canon, because guess what? If you said it, it's gonna come out, and you should be aware of that. Everyone should be informed about their past sins. We so busy trying to act like the things that we said a year ago or 400 years ago shouldn't be counted against us, and that right there is the other issue. So you want COVID misinformation, okay, to be counted against this brother. But real incidents of replayable and succinct use of the N-word, you want to call that an infraction and a double standard? Get the fuck out of here.